All right, and we are live. I've got us right at 7:01 p.m. and that's Central Standard Time. I'm here in Austin, Texas. This is Peter Keller from Fringe Sport. You can see I'm sporting my Fringe Sport togs and I'm in my beautiful office. Got some of my secrets on the board behind me. Don't look at that stuff. Don't steal my secrets. So, just kidding. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we start diving into the actual webinar. I'm using YouTube Live, which is a Google Hangouts product. I've never actually broadcast on this methodology before, so I need to figure out what's going on here. Hang on just a moment. Okay, I just checked the live stream and it's working. Looks like I've got some viewers starting to line up on there, so thank you very much. Hello, everybody. We've got a group chat that should be accessible on the right side of the screen. Let me enter in. See if I can get any responses yet. Okay, so what I'm just going to go ahead and end up, what I'm going to go ahead and do right now is I'm just going to dive right into the presentation. So the presentation I've called Better Business Through Osmosis, Masterminds 101. Part of the reason why I named it that is because to me, a mastermind group is one of the most organic ways that has helped me to grow Fringe Sport to where it is today. And you know, where it is today is a multi-million-dollar business that initially came out of my garage and is now, hang on just a second, sorry about that. A multi-million-dollar business that's 5 years old that came out of my garage that, you know, by, you know, many of the metrics of success is a very successful business. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just saying this to kind of set the stage for where we are. We've got 14 employees. We've got about a 25,000 square foot facility in Austin, Texas. We've got a few affiliates in different states. And, you know, we're looking at a lot of options for expansion this year. But one of the things that's very key to me in building up Fringe was being able to pass on the lessons of what I've learned throughout the years. So this mastermind idea is something that's really helped me, and I think it could help a lot of people. When I talk to people at parties or events, things like that, throwdowns, not many people have really utilized this because there's one real key to the masterminds. It's not just the people that you choose to surround yourself with, in that they're people that are your friends or are very similar, you know, mindset to where you are. But the real key to it is that you need to surround yourself with people who have been there, done that. So it's all well and good to surround yourself with people that you like who are trying to do some of the similar things that you are, but you really have to seek out the people who have already done that and been there. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen and I'm going to start my presentation. I'm also, in addition to using YouTube, which I haven't used before for webinars, I'm using a presentation software called Prezi, and it's had some mixed mixed results, but you'll see. And the main part of the presentation is me talking anyways. So give me a moment and I'll get that Prezi started up. Sorry, I know once again it's terribly stimulating when I just sit here not doing anything. about to share my screen, and then we'll really get going. All right, here we are. The presentation that I've got here is, Better Business Through Osmosis, Masterminds 101. I'm Peter Keller, the founder and CEO of Fringe Sports, but hopefully you knew that already. So, moving on to masterminds. So, the mastermind concept was one that was introduced to me by the really great entrepreneurial podcast, it's the Tropical MBA podcast. They rebranded a while back. So the Tropical MBA podcast is a great podcast. I would absolutely recommend anybody check that out. It's got a focus on entrepreneurs building businesses that are location independent. But I'm not location dependent. I'm based in Austin, Texas, got a family, a home, real solid roots here. But I still find it to be a really great podcast about a lot of stuff that's on the cutting edge of entrepreneurship. So I'd recommend checking it out. And Dan and Ian, the guys who are behind that podcast, are really huge in this concept of masterminds. So what a mastermind is where you get a group of 4 to 8 similarly minded people. In this case, it's generally entrepreneurs that you're getting together, and you agree to meet weekly or bi-weekly. Sometimes they even meet monthly, but honestly, you typically need to be meeting weekly or bi-weekly, and you have a sort of structured meeting or structured sharing that is for the mutual benefit of all involved. So it's one of those synergy things. Typically, you want everyone to have some of the same business goals or the same goals for whatever reason you've convened the mastermind all together in that mastermind. In other words, you wouldn't want somebody who's potentially, let's say it's a gym business mastermind, you potentially might not want to have some CrossFit trainer who is training at a gym but wants to open a gym in the same mastermind as someone who's running, the most successful CrossFit gyms in their city or something like that, along with a few other people who are kind of every stage in between. While you do want to punch up, so to speak, in terms of who you've gotten there, you want everybody to have somewhat similar concerns and somewhat similar stages. So for me, for example, I'm right now forming a new mastermind and I'm looking for companies that have at minimum $4 million in revenue, have a multi-channel strategy to go to market, and have at maximum $10 million in revenue. I am open to other businesses that are in strength and conditioning, but here's one very key aspect, and I'll touch on this a little bit later in this session. It's very bad to have a couple of companies that are competitive. So for me, even though I'm frenemies with some of my competitors in space, we would absolutely not be in a mastermind together. And that's pretty obvious, because you want a mastermind in order to be successful to be very open and transparent among the participants of the mastermind. So if you have participants in the mastermind that are competitors of yours, you're definitely not going to be sharing your secret sauce in there. And, so it's just not really going to work very well. So let me tell 2 stories about 2 different masterminds that have helped me out a lot over the years. First of all, this is a mastermind of a slightly different group. I'm in an entrepreneurship group called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and it's a geographically hubbed entrepreneurship group. When you get in, and there's pretty stringent membership requirements, but when you get in, you then get into a type of mastermind group called a forum. So they call it a forum, where you've got another 6 to probably 8 other entrepreneurs in the group. There are, again, no conflicting businesses in your group, and obviously no partners, spouses, or anything like that in your group. And you meet once a month, plus once a year you have a retreat. So for our retreats, we've been to Cuba once, we went to Arizona once, went rafting, we climbed a mountain, Grand Teton, once. But the key to this mastermind was getting together, or this forum was getting together once a month in a structured way to go over our businesses and go over the challenges that we're facing in our business. So for me, one of the things that was super key to this mastermind is at a time I had some very severe issues with, partnership, kind of running through what was going on at Fringe at the time. And these were problems that I had never faced before. But, and the other thing that was key to that was that my partner was my brother. And so I had family and partnership issues running together, and it got, pretty ugly there for a while. And one of the things my EO forum was able to help me get through was, providing me a few paths to resolution for what was going on at that time. And then B, honestly, giving a check on some of the crud that was up in my head, because, there are always two sides to a story, but many times when you're in the thick of it, you can't see when you're being a jerk. And there were a few times where I was being unreasonable, but my forum group was able to help me see that I was the unreasonable party in the conflict, or possibly we were both being unreasonable. So I have successfully exited from my partnership problems with Fringe, which is probably a tale for another day, but it was one of the biggest business challenges that I've faced in my life. And it was extremely difficult, both on a business and emotional level. And I know that I would not have resolved it as well or cleanly as I have done if I hadn't been through that mastermind group. The other mastermind group that's been very valuable to me was actually organized online. It was with a bunch of people that I've met only kind of in passing here and there. But, so that's the great thing. You don't have to necessarily meet people in person. You can do a Skype call or something like that. And this is a overseas manufacturing mastermind group. So one of the things that I've personally historically been very good at is manufacturing product in China. It's really what I kind of cut my teeth on when I was a younger businessman. And it's something that I've continued to do fairly well up to and including today. So I ended up getting in a mastermind with a bunch of other people who wanted to do overseas or, domestic manufacturing. And they were actually able to help me out a lot, particularly when I was trying to crack the nut on how to manufacture domestically in the US, because that was something at the time that I just hadn't had any experience with. And that was a monthly mastermind. And by the way, it fell apart. As I had mentioned earlier, weekly or bi-weekly masterminds are definitely better. Part of the problem with the monthly mastermind was that since it was once a month, people would often, including myself, forget when the mastermind was. And then B, there wouldn't be a lot of coherence from one mastermind call to another, because you'd have 30 days in between every call. But that helped me a lot. Cracking the nut of US-based manufacturing, and I helped a lot of people with some overseas manufacturing. So that's what a mastermind is, and that's how it's helped me specifically. Now, a few benefits that you guys can look for from masterminds. Number one, it's a huge learning experience. As an entrepreneur, there's this romance to, saying F you to a boss and going out in the wilderness and killing your own animals and eating your own animals, that sort of thing. Making a living greater or lesser on your wits and on the abilities of yourself. But there's also there can be an intense loneliness and isolation to that. So one of the great things about a mastermind group is that you can actually surround yourself with other entrepreneurs who, even though they're not competitive or not doing exactly what you're doing, and if you're a gym owner, for example, you might surround yourself with entrepreneurs in a different geographical area, a different city, different state, heck, even a different country, where they're not competitive, and you can kind of share and learn from them in an open and non-competitive environment. Another great thing, and this is something that's helped me out a lot over the years, is you can network up. So I'll come back to this. I mentioned it earlier in the presentation, and I'll come back to this towards the end of the presentation. Hang on just a moment here. Sorry, I'm just doing a quick check to make sure that everything's coming through all right. All right. Awesome. So I was mentioning networking up. So for me, the very most important thing that you can do, or sorry, one of the key things that people forget about with a mastermind group, and this is something that I had made a joke about in an earlier email about changing your friend set, is this concept of networking up. I really never forget that when I wanted to start a business, I hung out with a bunch of people who wanted to start businesses, and they're all good people. Some of them are still, good friends of mine now, but we all wanted to start businesses and none of us did. And we talked about wanting to do this, and we talked about, our hopes and dreams and what we would do, but we never actually took real and meaningful action on those hopes and dreams. So when I noticed that, I started hanging out with people who had been there, done that, and had started their own businesses. And when I was hanging out with them, both virtually, kind of online, as well as listening to podcasts, and then of course, in the flesh, locally, I ended up starting my own business because, among other things, just quite frankly, I was embarrassed to be an employee hanging out with these other entrepreneurs, because I would bring, when we'd go have a beer, or we would, hang out or chat on Facebook or whatever, I would have what I consider at this point like employee concerns, which to me were always faintly embarrassing around these seasoned entrepreneurs. So now, as I've continued my journey, I try to, yes, hang out with people who are on my level, so to speak, and then also help out people who are trying to get to where, I am. But then I try to spend as much time as I possibly can networking or hanging out with people who are, been there, done that, where I'm trying to go. Now, honestly, this has gotten a little bit harder as time has gone on, and I think that has a lot to do with me. But this is a great way, when you form a mastermind group, you can really, like I said, network up and hang out with people who are punching at a higher level than you are in a very organic and normal way that can pull you along there. Another great thing that masterminds can do is they can be a quasi board for your business, or even just a sounding board or a bullshit meter for you as a person. So when I was in the forum for entrepreneurs organization, we had a few people in there who had companies that were actually, doing pretty well from a revenue standpoint. And the entrepreneurs had managed to keep most or all control of their companies, even as they were pushing some pretty decent revenue levels. And that was great. That was awesome. But one of the things is, there's no one in those companies to call those entrepreneurs to task for, accountability, or really, for anything. If they wanted to go and take a vacation in Hawaii every month, they could go take a vacation in Hawaii every month. And it's not a bad thing if that's your goal in life. But if your goal in life is to really do something special with your business, you need to be very present and you need to be very accountable. And I personally am not good at being very accountable just to myself. And I've noticed that in a lot of other people too. So if you have a mastermind and you say, hey, I'm going to use this mastermind as my accountability group. We're going to meet once a week. I'm going to tell them this is what I'm going to do from this week to the next, or this is what I'm going to do in this quarter or this month or whatever. And then that they're going to ask you, hey, you said at the start of the quarter you were going to do this. Did you do that? And then you'll have to tell them no. And you can either put, or yes, if hopefully if you did it, and you can either use your embarrassment or whatever as the key to make you do things, or you can actually even put teeth to it. So we had pretty hefty punishments in one of the mastermind groups that I was in if you didn't meet your accountability goals, and it really helped to push people to those goals. And one thing in here, I had said board, I really do mean board of directors here, but if we think sounding board, like I had mentioned before, I think a mark of a really good friend is that he tells you when you're full of crap. And a lot of us don't, for whatever reason, have friends that will honestly tell us when we're full of crap. But in a number of mastermind groups that I've been in, people have told me that. And honestly, sometimes they've been right and sometimes they've been wrong, at least in my opinion. But it's really valuable to have someone who will at least take that stand against you. So moving on into the nuts and bolts, how do you join or create a mastermind group? So I mentioned in here DC. I had mentioned before the Tropical MBA podcast and also EO Entrepreneurs Organization. These are two different, the Dynamite Circle is a private membership only group for entrepreneurs that I'm a member of. This is not a sales pitch for the DC. I'm just mentioning it here because it's provided a lot of value to me. And it is one of the key features of the Dynamite Circle, which is, I don't know how much they cost. It's probably 50 or $100 a month at this point. One of the key benefits is that the Dynamite Circle facilitates getting into a mastermind group. They're really, really big on these masterminds. And actually, a lot of the content for this presentation comes from the Dynamite Circle. So if you're interested, you can try joining there. What I would do is I would listen to a few episodes of the very free Tropical MBA first. And if you seem to like the sort of thing that you hear, think about the DC. If you don't, no worries. I just mention it because that's a fairly easy way to find and join a mastermind. I'd also mentioned previously EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization. So EO is a little bit harder, a little bit more selective to get into than the DC. It's another entrepreneurship group. The fees for EO vary by city, but it's typically around $5,000 to $8,000 a year. And, I know there are groups that are less expensive and there are also groups that are more expensive, but, you can kind of work it out from there. Now, you can join mastermind groups. And so we're going to move away from talking about the DC and the EO right now. Let's just talk kind of in general, because most mastermind groups don't or shouldn't cost money. So to join mastermind groups, you can look around online to see if you can find mastermind groups that are already existing. Facebook is a great method to search around. There also are a lot of bloggers or a lot of podcasts that facilitate this thing. But what I want to spend a little more time about is talking about creating mastermind groups, because I really do feel this is the best way to get that networking up, to really create an awesome mastermind group for yourself, and to really I think it's the best way outside of joining the DC or EO or something that costs money to really get into a meaningful mastermind group situation. So in order to create the mastermind group, you need to figure out who you want in that group. So first of all, you're going to want, let me see if I put this later in the presentation. Okay, I don't think so. So who you're going to want is you're going to want about 4. I think you need at minimum 4 and maximum 8. I would say 8's a lot of people to have in a mastermind group, but 6 is a great number. 7's probably a great number. 5's probably a great number. So let's just call it 4 to 8 people, including yourself, in that mastermind group. You want to be extremely selective about the people that you let in that group, to the point that rather than recruiting, you might reach out to people in a way that almost seems like you want to see if they're a good fit, but you're afraid that you'll reject them if they did apply for this group, if you're doing a formal application process. You want to be very clear that there can be no conflicts of business in this group. So for example, if you're running a gym, you have to be 100% clear that for the duration of the mastermind, which could be anywhere from 3 months to, possibly, I know several masterminds that are several years long, that there's no conflict of business for that foreseeable future. Otherwise, one of you has got to leave the mastermind group. And the reason for this is that the mastermind group, in order to be most successful and to fire on all cylinders, it's really got to have a lot of transparency in there. You need to be comfortable sharing your best customer acquisition secrets, what's going wrong with your business, your dirty laundry, what's going great with your business, even potentially personal stuff if it's impinging upon your business. I'm getting divorced with my wife and I can't focus on the office, things like that. You also, one thing that I see with masterminds that's kind of a problem sometimes is people want to bring their partners into the mastermind with them. I think that's a big mistake because if your partner wants to be a member of a mastermind, and I'm talking either business partner or spouse, probably more business partner here. If your partner really wants to be in a mastermind that badly, like you've got a great opportunity to get 2 masterminds going. And so your business could actually have the benefit of 2 sounding boards, of 2 levels of learning or of networking rather than 1. So that's one issue. The other issue is I've never seen a business with partners that there wasn't partner conflict. And that's one of the things that you may be talking about a lot in these mastermind settings. And some partner conflict is unhealthy. I have just recently gotten out of a situation with Fringe where I had an unhealthy level of partner conflict. I have another different partner now, and we have what I consider to be healthy partner conflict at this time. But that still means that I still have my issues and I need a area to bring that up. And I bring it up in one of my masterminds. So beyond that, I had talked before, many times about this idea of punching up. So if you're forming a mastermind group, what I would say is reach out to people who are 1 or 2 rungs above you along the path that you're hoping to walk, and then see about getting them into the mastermind group. And actually, after this webinar, I'm going to go ahead and put in the blog post where this is hosted on Fringe a cut and paste little mastermind template, let's say, to try and get people in and reach out to people. One thing that you need to understand, of course, is what it looks like from the other side. So first of all, a lot of times masterminds can sound a little bit scammy or spammy, and they are in some cases used in a scammy or spammy way. So you just have to make sure that you're minimizing what that sounds like from you. And if you're reaching out to people who you don't know but you think would be really great to put in your mastermind group, it's really best to reach out through a warm intro. So somebody can say, hey, this is so-and-so, they're trying to do this. And then you move in from that. So that's a really great thing to keep in mind there. So, and then the other thing, like I mentioned, is it really depends on what your goal for the mastermind is. You might just want a general business mastermind. And in that case, it might be okay to be in it. If you're a gym owner, or as I am, a strength and conditioning equipment, multi-channel retailer, or whatever you want to call us, it might be okay to be in a mastermind with a car wash owner or a limo company owner, things like that. But you definitely want to be selective about who's in there. The other thing that I would mention is if you are looking for entrepreneurial help, or if you're looking for an entrepreneurial mastermind, make sure that you have genuine entrepreneurs in there. versus somebody who's like an executive at such and such company or something. The executive may have a lot to bring to the table, but if they're not an entrepreneur, they're not going to have the same experience and thoughts that you have. All right, so let's say that you've recruited a few people in. How do you structure this? So I'm a big fan of at minimum weekly at first, at maximum bi-weekly. I had mentioned before that I was in a mastermind call that was monthly that basically fell apart. I really just think that the way business moves these days, you've got to be meeting weekly or bi-weekly. I would say an hour is sufficient unless you have to do a deep dive on someone's business, or unless somebody, you might have a rule that somebody can basically pull the emergency lever and say, hey, I need a meeting right away and it needs to be, whatever. And then whoever can come can get, needs to get to that meeting to help that member out. I would suggest doing this via Skype or Google Hangout. Google Hangout is similar to what I'm doing here, except I'm, basically broadcasting on the Hangout. But on Skype or Google Hangout, you can see people face to face even as you're talking. And there's a couple of benefits to this. One, it's just good to see people's face when they're talking. Number two, and this is kind of a funny thing, it minimizes the distractions that the members of your mastermind call are going to be able to engage in. So for example, if you call somebody on the cell phone, or excuse me, if somebody uses the cell phone to call in to the mastermind call, it's very easy for them to do the dishes or, do work or something like that, and, kind of give lip service to being involved, but not actually be involved. So I would say Skype or Google Hangout, something where you could see people face to face. I would say weekly. The structure, I would say if it's 60 minutes, you should probably have about the first 10 minutes where you have agreed to certain metrics. And this goes back to the accountability thing. And then you all read off your metrics and then maybe have an extremely brief discussion if any of your metrics are red or, off target. And then you move into what a lot of people call the hot seat. So the hot seat should take up the majority of your meeting. And it should be where one member goes in a deep dive, to a business or, got the hiccups here, business or possibly personal issue that's facing them. So to be honest, in Entrepreneurs Organization, where I had my forum, I did have quite a few hot seats that were on partnership issues. I've also been in the hot seat before where I've talked about, hiring and promoting employees. And I've even had a hot seat, when I had an issue at one point with my wife where I, said, hey, here's the issue. I need to get some feedback on what's going on here. And then you would rotate that hot seat weekly. Now, as far as metrics go, one thing that you should talk about with your mastermind group is, are you only going to be discussing business matters, or are personal matters as they relate to the business acceptable, or are personal matters in general acceptable? So for example, in my Entrepreneurs Organization, everything was fair game. So the issue that I brought up with my wife at one point was just purely a personal issue between me and her that had zero reflection on the business, other than potentially maybe I was thinking about it when I could have been working or something like that. But that was okay for that group because that was within our structure of what we were looking at. But in some groups that are very business focused, they may be not so forgiving for bringing up matters like that. So basically the way that this would look is you would say, okay, we're going to do a call 7 p.m. Central Standard Time or whatever every Thursday. First 5 minutes, we're going to say, Peter's going to say, here's what my sales were for the last week at Fringe. Here's what my overhead was, overhead percentage as a amount of sales. And then, I might say, here's what my squat is, because at a certain point I was trying to work my squat up, and maybe I could use this even to make me work on my squat, that sort of thing. And then we'd move on to the next person, next person, next person, and then someone would be in the hot seat, and they might say, let's say they were running a gym, they might say, oh, my member retention has been really bad, so let's talk about how I can retain more members, something like that. So here are a couple of general rules, and then I'm gonna see if there are any questions, and then we'll finish up with a little bit of discussion. So this is my last prepared slide, let's say. So I've been talking a lot about what the masterminds, how to, in a kind of general way, what a mastermind is, how to form it. Here are some like bedrock things for a successful mastermind. Number one, you've got to go deep, always deep, no shallow shit. Excuse my French. So if you're not really going to go deep in terms of things that are very impactful to your business and your life, it's not worthwhile. And you might as well just spend your time doing something else. Because the only way that a mastermind is really going to help you, I mean, a mastermind is not you taking somebody out for coffee and just kind of picking their brain a little bit. You're supposed to be, a band of brothers or brothers and sisters or whatnot that are really helping to make meaningful changes in each other's businesses and possibly each other's lives. So don't cheat the system, go deep or just don't do it. And part of going deep means, forming a group where there's a high level of trust and then trusting that trust, if you know what I mean. The next thing is do the work. Again, this is another thing. If you're not going to do the work, don't even bother showing up. So doing the work means if there's any pre-work to do, for example, making your metrics, creating your metrics, if you guys have decided during a mastermind call that you're going to maybe discuss a book that you've read or a book that you've all jointly read or something like that, or a common mastermind activity might be creating an obituary. That old exercise, pretend you died in 50 years or whatever and write your obituary. What would people say? How many children do you have? How many ex-wives do you have? So if you agree that you're going to do that stuff, you've got to do the work. Then during the actual call itself, you must be present. Even if somebody else is in the hot seat, not you, in fact, that's the time where you might even need to be more present than if it's just you in the hot seat. Because somebody is saying, one of your partners is saying, I need your help. So you need to be present and helping for them. Like I mentioned before, 4 to 8 people. 8 to me seems like a lot. 4 seems like a little, but 5, 6, 7 seems pretty good to me. And then commit, 90-day minimum. As I mentioned before, I know of several masterminds that are years old and that have been very impactful and meaningful to some very successful entrepreneurs for several years. So, but I would say that a 90-day minimum commitment is what everybody needs to get this mastermind up and running and off the ground. And that's just something that if somebody says, hey, I can't commit for 90 days, okay, fine. Maybe you're not a good fit. The other thing about this general rule, which kind of goes back a little bit to forming the mastermind, let's say you get somebody in and they're not following these rules. They're not really going deep. They're showing up. Maybe they're not doing the work. They're not being present when they're there. Maybe they miss masterminds. I mean, people are, life happens. People are going to miss now and then. But the reality is that if you set it up right, emergencies don't come up very often, and people shouldn't be missing on a regular basis. And so what happens if they do? Well, the unfortunate answer is you kick them out. And you can do it in a nice way. I've been kicked out of a mastermind before. And I don't hate those guys. No, they're jerks. No, I'm just kidding. No, I really don't hate those guys. So if the rules, we're all adults, right? If the rules are set up front and the rules are not followed, then you're out. And the key to keeping as much emotion out of it as possible is to just make those ground rules set in stone and upfront. And then when the rules get broken, yeah, you know, execute on them. And let's say, okay, somebody misses a mastermind call because they got in a car wreck. All right, that's probably legit, right? Somebody misses a mastermind call because, you know, their kid had a play or something like that. You know, while I'm super family oriented. To me, that sounds like a reschedule the mastermind call situation, not a miss the mastermind call situation. Because, I mean, I don't think there's a big deal with rescheduling the call now and again, unless it's happening every single time. But you've got to really discriminate between what's a legit emergency and what's just life. And then if somebody has emergencies all the time, maybe they shouldn't be in the mastermind anyways. Maybe they've got an emergency-filled life that they need to focus on. So that's what I've got for the general rules. Let's see if I can kill this right now. All right, back to me. Now you can see my secrets again. Don't steal them. Don't steal them. I'm just kidding. I erased everything that was super critical before. It's my plan to take over the world. All right. And I'm back. Okay, so we've got a group chat that should be out to the right of your screen. And if it's not, I think if you mouse over, you can, there's a little blue chat icon on the left. So if you've got any questions right now, I'm an open book. If there are questions, you guys have got me for at least the next 18 minutes. If there aren't any questions, I'll read off a few things that I might have missed on the presentation, and then we'll call it a day. Let me do a quick check here. Okay, so we've got a group chat that should be out to the right of your screen. Not. I think if you mouse over, you can. All right, I'm guessing. Oh, okay, cool. Oddly, I can see the chat on YouTube. And I see a couple of questions here on YouTube. Sorry. Okay, guys. Love the great question in the chat from Retro Intensity. So the question is, if your goal is to punch up, what do you bring to the table that are doing the opposite? That's an awesome, awesome question. So the reality is that even if someone, okay, so there are two things. Answer number one is, what do you specifically bring to the table that the other people couldn't otherwise get? And the reality is that no matter what has happened in your life or in your business, you've got something there. You bring something to the table that no one else can have, which is you and your expertise and your abilities and things that you've done. So for Mr. Retro Intensity here, you know, I don't know you personally that well. We've chatted a few times before through email and whatnot, but you know, let's just say maybe it would be your branding or what you've done with your garage gym, or you know, things like that. Maybe, you know, internet marketing, or you know, Reddit or Imager or whatever. So there's something there that you bring. So for example, in a previous mastermind that I was in that had some people that had companies that were doing $10 million in revenue, I knew a lot about sourcing product overseas that they didn't know, but they were very curious and very interested in. So I brought that to the table. Additionally, in a previous mastermind that I was in, a different mastermind, there were not a lot of people who knew a lot about internet marketing. And so I know a fair bit about internet marketing. And so I brought that to the table, even if my business wasn't that big just yet. And then the same previous mastermind that I was in, I also was in a group with a bunch of people who weren't like super fit, actually. And they really loved the fact that I ran a fitness business because they could learn and be inspired on a more personal level by that. So the other thing that you bring to the table, particularly if you're creating the mastermind, is you're bringing together a potentially very exciting group of people that the entrepreneurs, if you do it well and you make a really great mastermind, should all get a lot of benefit out of. So that's one of the things that you're bringing to the table. And the reality is, so me having 14 employees, there are a lot of people in this world who are just, sorry, let me correct this. I got some great employees. But one of the things to mention is that there are a lot of people in this world who basically just want to more or less phone it in. And, you know, again, I want to backtrack again that I have really excellent employees, but, you know, in my process of going through and learning how to hire and how to see people, if you find someone who's really passionate and who's really trying to do something or make something in the world, you just get inspired as well. So there's this guy, his name's Chris Duncan, and he runs a business called Courage. It's Couraj, Courage. I'm not sure if it's courage.com or something like that, but I'm sure if you search for Couraj, you'd find it. One of the things that I love about Chris is that that dude is just fired up. And his business is still pretty young, I think. I haven't checked on him in the last like 6, maybe 3 months or so. But he's fired up. He's really trying to do something. And so whenever I'm, you know, helping him out or hanging out with him or something like that, it really inspires me because he's trying to do something. And he knows more about like social media marketing or whatever than I know. So for example, if Chris is like, hey, Peter, want to get in on this with me? It would be interesting for me to get in with Chris because A, he's super passionate. And I remember, you know, I've been in my business 5 years. I still love what we do. I'm still passionate about what we do, but I don't have that like blind eye, kind of naive, kind of ignorant passion of the beginning entrepreneur. But I'm wistful for that. And so I'd like to see that. So got another question in here. Oh, great question from Alex Peterson. Question is, I've only ever participated in a paid-for mastermind. Do you find that non-paid-for masterminders flake out more often? So Alex, great freaking question, and I got a bad answer for you. The answer is yes. A lot of times non-paid-for masterminders do flake out. So I'd mentioned before that Entrepreneurs Organization, which I'm a member of, has, so explicitly, I think they have $2,500 worth of dues for Austin, because I'm in Austin, Texas. And then I think they have $2,500 worth of dues for their global business. And then there's an additional probably like $3,000 to $4,000 worth of expenditures that you have to make if you're a member of EO. I mean, you basically have to do it. So, you know, we're talking $9,000 to get into EO. But EO has a really high compliance rate. And part of the reason I believe it has a really high compliance rate is because I pay $9,000 a year for it. I got to get value out of that 9K. Whereas for a free mastermind, yes, you know, even in myself, I can see like, hey, I might flake on that because it's a free mastermind. So one of the keys to that is to make your mastermind sticky as much as possible. make it a huge part of the life and the success of the people that are in it. I mean, if you really get deep in a mastermind and you create, not just business value, but emotional connections among the people who are members of the mastermind, and it's so much easier to say, obviously, than it is to do, then you're really going to get a lot more compliance in those masterminds. All right, do we have any other questions? Cool. Well, I don't see any more questions. If you guys have anything, you got me for another 9 minutes. But let me just take a little loop back and see if there's anything that I missed out on that I had really wanted to get in there. And I'm still going to be checking for those questions. Okay, I got a random Fringo question. Yeah, go ahead. You got me. Just one warning. Sorry, I'm talking to Retro Intensity here. Random fringe sport question, not mastermind related. I do have a webcam here, but I am going to be keeping my clothes on today. So the question is, Rogan again faster sponsor events? Does Fringe sponsor events? Absolutely. That's a great question. So we do sponsor events. And in fact, I was just at World War Fit last weekend, which is a Dallas, Texas event. And, we sponsored it. So it's been, yes. So the answer is yes. Yes. If you're interested in us sponsoring an event, send an email into team@fringesport.com. I will tell you that that event sponsorship, just like athlete sponsorship, has been a bit of a sticky wicket for Fringe lately. Or, well, honestly, ever since Fringe has been around. I've been trying to figure out how that fits into our business model. I'm extremely focused from a Fringe perspective on finding these like win-win-win situations wherever I can find them. Sorry, another question I just saw. So I'm extremely focused on finding win-win-win situations wherever I can find them. I need, and we need to, so our customers are the very most important constituency to us. So we need to find solutions that are clear 100% wins for our customers, clear 100% wins for Fringe, the company, and then clear 100% wins for our suppliers, our community, or whatever other constituencies there are out there. And with some of the event sponsorships, it's been unclear to me how Fringe benefits or how it's even different for the end user, the people who are at the events, the competitors, whether Fringe sponsors or Rogue sponsors, again, faster sponsors. And so we've been trying to do it in a different way. Maybe it's worked, maybe it hasn't. So this is kind of a long answer, but yes, we sponsor events. And then any drama with that was the follow-up question. I heard there was some drama with the ECC last weekend. So to be honest, I actually hadn't heard of any drama with the ECC. So with CrossFit HQ, so a couple of things. To be clear, we are a strength and conditioning equipment company. We are not affiliated in any way with CrossFit, to be very clear. And one of the things that I try to, I am a CrossFitter. I started CrossFitting in 2005 off the main page. I'm fairly plugged into CrossFit, but I'm also just on a personal level fairly drama averse, and I don't think that the drama is potentially good for Fringe, and so we try to steer clear of drama situations. So for us, we sponsored World War Fit, zero drama situation. It is not a CrossFit competition. It was run by Rise, I think it's Rise Up CrossFit, or Rise CrossFit, but it is World War Fit. It's a throwdown or a fitness comp is what it is. So, and then Retro makes another comment. No comment to that other comment. So Alex has a question. How do you go about determining good related industries for your business? Say law firm owner. Most law firm owners are notoriously bad business people and will eat their own in a second. Oh my God, Alex. Great, great, great question. I know who to market to in terms of good reciprocal referral sources, but this feels entirely different. So, Alex, first of all, I wanted to apologize that we weren't able to get together when I was in Florida, and I'll give you a call one of these days. And then you sent me a really, really nice snail mail letter, and so I wanted to thank you and tell you that I appreciate that very much. So, in terms of determining good related industries for your business, to be honest, and this is just me like shooting from the hip, I would say if you could find, let's say you even want to keep it geographic, like, okay, so you're a law firm. Let's say that you wanted to form a mastermind group kind of in your area. I would say go find a doctor, a dentist, a doctor who owns his own medical practice, a dentist who owns his own dental practice. Even possibly like somebody who owns a construction company or HVAC company or something like that, because they will probably have similar business problems, let's say, problems, quote unquote, to what you'd be going through in terms of like trying to source customers in like a geographic area. And they might be very, very interested in kind of cross-pollination of what you're doing to get clients versus what they're doing to get clients. I may be kind of off there, but that's one of the things that I would mention. Another thing that I would mention about that is it might be interesting for you even to join up with some people who are in fairly different businesses, because so for example, with a law firm, I know a lot of people who are in online lead gen businesses of one form or another, and it might be super, super beneficial for your business and interesting for your business if you started trying to figure out how to generate, and I don't know your business at all. So, but if you're not generating a lot of your leads online, it might be super helpful for you to get with some of these guys who are really good, to get in a mastermind with these guys who are really good at online lead gen. Among other things, I know that some of these guys charge, a good online lead gen person might charge $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 a month. And you might be able to get all that information for free if you just got into a mastermind with them and, learn more about their business, became friends with them and that sort of thing. So hopefully that helped. Got it. Alex is saying matrimonial and family law. So something else, just one other thing that comes to mind is you might, join up with other lawyers who are clearly non-competitive to you. I know you'd mentioned, bad business people who eat their own. Just one other rando thing, since you're a lawyer, I have a cousin who just became a doctor, and if you haven't read the book, what is it? The Millionaire Next Door, I would highly recommend to read that book, because one of the things that this is completely random from our conversation, but one of the things that book, The Millionaire Next Door, goes over really well is why high wage people, which, you're a lawyer, who knows, but why high wage people tend to be under accumulators of wealth. And it was a book that was really very interesting to me as I come from a background in business and, let's say a high wage background. And it really struck home to me, why do you see so many kind of corporate drones driving BMWs? And even, I have friends who drive Porsches who absolutely shouldn't be driving Porsches. They can afford it, quote unquote, but maybe if they weren't driving a Porsche now, they might be able to drive a Ferrari when they retire, something like that. Anyways, again, don't know anything about your situation, but it's a great book. All right, we're about coming to the end. I had some great questions coming through. Anything else? If there's anything else, I'll take one more. If not, I'll say thank you so much for giving me your attention. All right, looks like that's about it. Cool. Well, whoops, there you go. Awesome. Alex, I love it. I love it. I love it. So I will tell you, one of the wealthiest people that I know drives. So this is Austin, Texas. It's very hot out here in the summer. Not right now, maybe. He's a very wealthy guy, and the car he drives is more than 10 years old, busted AC. You wouldn't know it. So it's inspirational to me. So some great comments here. All right, guys, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you so much. This has been really enjoyable for me. And why don't you guys buy some barbells? Come on. Cheers.